Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
All right, well, welcome everyone to our inaugural Gita class breakdown. Just to start, if people are unfamiliar with the mantra that we just chanted, Varangi, do you want to give a little bit of background of what that mantra is about?
Yeah, so we're opening up our sessions, and actually, traditionally, we chant this mantra before we start studying sacred text or speaking about spiritual topics. And this mantra serves as a way to spiritualize or purify the atmosphere and our minds so we can concentrate on deeper topics, and we can put aside all our, I guess, material conditionings that will otherwise stand in the way of understanding just deeper topics. This mantra specifically means I offer my respects to the Supreme Person, to the Divine, to Krishna. And yeah, we'll go ahead and open up with that.
Yeah, and at our Gita class on Friday night at the Laguna Temple, we always start out with that mantra. So it's nice to know what we're chanting about. So I thought it'd be nice, since this is our first episode, to start off with a few introductions. So Tadeo, Prabhu, would you like to just give a brief intro of who you are and how you came to Krishna consciousness?
Yes, my name is Tadeo Souza. A lot of people know me by Tadeo. A lot of people know me by Souza. But hopefully all that will change soon, since I've been an aspiring servant of His Holiness Devamrita Swami. So hopefully soon we take an initiation and I will have yet another name. I came from Brazil, so I have a Catholic background and always very curious about spiritual life and theology, philosophy in general. And at one point in my life, really started to question more about spiritual life, and was very fortunate to encounter one Hare Krishna devotee at Long Beach State University campus who was passing out books. And I stood there and spoke with him for about 2 hours about many various topics, at the end of which he asked me, so will you come to the temple on Sundays? And I said yes, and we never stopped coming to the temple since then. That was 12 years ago.
Very nice. Thank you. And then how long have you been studying under Tukaram Prabhu?
Under Tukaram Prabhu specifically, 9 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Very nice. Okay, and Varangi, how about you?
So I'm originally from Colombia, and yeah, I also, like Souza, was brought up in the Catholic tradition. Went to Catholic school all my life. I really appreciated the discipline of the tradition, and yeah, I guess that devotion for connecting with God was there since an early age. Once my family and I came to the United States, you know, the focus was different. It was now, you know, trying to go to school and make things happen. And I started searching for other traditions that I could identify with in a better way, in a more personal way for me. And it was during this search that in 2009, I came across actually Souza Prabhu and our friend David Darshan. And he actually started to teach me about the Bhagavad Gita and lessons, vegetarianism, how to uplift our consciousness, how to live in this world and not become entangled in it, and so many other lessons I didn't know were part of the Gita. And so little by little, I was becoming more intrigued as to where he was getting this information. I was on my last semester in college, and I was about to graduate, and I thought, I have never learned so much about stuff that actually matters, and I'm about to graduate, you know. And so then David Darshan brought me to the Laguna Beach Temple, where Tukaram Prabhu was giving class. And that's where I met Zoza and his wife, Carolina, and all these other practitioners. And I was really attracted by how practical spiritual life seemed. Everybody had families and were still doing things outside of the temple, but they were very seriously searching for truth. And so I was hooked on that, on the philosophy and the community. And I've been studying under Tukaram Prabhu for 10 years, studying the Bhagavad Gita weekly. And every time I study it, I learn new things. So I'm happy and grateful to be able to have the space to share with both of you.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Yeah, and my name's Kim Hollander, and I grew up in a very conservative Christian household, and in my teens and early 20s was turned off by that God that I was brought up with for being a very fear-based religion. And I circled back around to spirituality in my 30s and 40s. But in the kind of impersonal, the universe kind of realm, I think it spoke to just my desire to connect with God again, but not wanting to connect with the God that I grew up with. And then through a friend of mine, I started going to the LA temple when I was living near there for a year. And in the last year is when I started going to the Laguna temple and meeting all of you guys and studying under Tukaram Prabhu. So I'm the newbie of the group, and I'm very excited to have this opportunity to learn more through you guys. So why don't we jump right in? I thought it'd be good for the listener if we give maybe an overview of chapter 1, since that's what we're talking about today. So Varangi, why don't you start first? Just like an overview for anyone who's new to the Gita or who's not new even. What's chapter 1 about?
Okay, so this is the book we're focusing on in case you've never seen one or you don't have a copy. We can also get you one if you want to go ahead and study with us as we do our readings and come together to speak about it. So it's the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and the translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And so briefly, the first chapter, yes, it's a little intimidating because a bunch of names are dropped, right? For those of you that are a little more familiar, the Bhagavad Gita is a conversation that happens towards the end of the Mahabharata. And that's an epic, long story, I would say. And so there's a lot of personalities that if you are familiar with the Mahabharata, you know who they are because they've been introduced throughout. If you're not, then you're coming into the Gita as a newcomer, which is the way I came in, and I believe both of you as well did. Then all these names could be a little distracting to begin with. And so pretty much all you need to know is that the Bhagavad Gita is a conversation that happens in the middle of a battlefield and of a battle. And the battlefield is called Kurukshetra, right? It's the place of the Kurus. The Kurus is a big family reigning the whole planet at this point. There are two sides, obviously, but they're part of the same family. So they're called the Kurus. The good side is called, they're the Pandavas. And the guys on the bad side of the same family, they're the Kauravas. Now, the father of the Pandavas has died. Now they're under the care of Dhritarashtra, who's the king at the moment. He is blind since birth. And our teachers explain that actually his blindness is also spiritual. And we will be able to see as we go through the Gita how his sons are also bereft of this spiritual vision. And so because of this, they're engaging in war. The protagonist of the story is Arjuna. Arjuna represents all of us, but he is the main character. He is a moral, great warrior who's gonna have to fight his family members, and he doesn't want to fight. It's difficult for him because he is so moral and compassionate and actually a really exalted being, and he doesn't want to have to inflict pain and kill his family members for something that seems so material, like a kingdom. So he's having a difficult time. At that point, Krishna, who's the divine, and at this point you don't need to know that he's the divine, but you'll later find out, he is the driver of Arjuna's chariot. And so Arjuna at this point has a crisis, and it starts this wonderful conversation with Krishna where he's asking questions, and Krishna, as the perfect teacher that he is, he'll start imparting knowledge to Arjuna, and that's what the Bhagavad Gita is, as a brief overview.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to include links to Tukaram Prabhu's lectures for the Gita class every Friday. He goes on live, Facebook Live every Friday as well at 7:45 p.m. around that time. And so these episodes are just on us going deeper, unpacking it, some realizations that we have from class, and making it easy for people who are new to the tradition or curious about the Gita to kind of digest it. So it's going to be like a little conversation format. And as far as of chapter 1, Tadeo, do you want to just start off the conversation by maybe the biggest theme or what you feel is one of the primary lessons of chapter 1 being brought forward?
Yes, sure. And in terms of introducing chapter 1 or introducing the entire Gita, in addition to what Varangi so expertly presented to us, I would like to add that throughout Gita, we will hear something like Arjuna said this and Krishna said that. This is Sanjaya actually speaking to Dhritarashtra, which is the blind king. And Sanjaya is actually at a remote place. And through the grace of his spiritual master, he's actually able to see the events that are going on in the battlefield. And he's narrating the events that he's able to see to his king, the blind king, Dhritarashtra. So that's Sanjaya's part in this. And also I would like to mention what led to this war, because again, Gita being part of a much larger literature, the Mahabharata, it's a small text compared to the Mahabharata itself, and we find ourselves at war. And what led to this war essentially was a dispute between the kingdom. The Pandavas were the righteous heir to the kingdom, and the Kauravas actually cheated them out of the kingdom. And after exhausting all diplomatic solutions, war was inevitable. So that's what led to this great war. Now, in terms of teachings of chapter 1, certainly there we are introducing the characters of Mahabharata in there, and we don't need to be really caught up on who they are and their names. They will never show up again in Bhagavad Gita. And to begin with, the one lesson that we can all give from it is how Arjuna feels at that point. He is looking across the battlefield and he realizes his family members there. And as a warrior, he's very dutiful. He's doing your duty is very important, especially for a warrior like him at that particular time in this planet. So he has to do his duty, and yet his duty is calling him to cause harm to the people he loves. And he's lamenting having to do that, not out of fear that he's going to engage in a war, but actually he's a very good and qualified warrior. And he knows that if he engages in this warfare against his family members, he's actually going to kill them all. And he laments having to do that. This is his family members, people that he loves. Through that realization, he's lamenting, everybody's going to die. And we are mortal. That's the realization there. We are immaterial bodies, which have a beginning and an end. And no matter how attached I am to things or people, inevitably, we're going to lose things and people in this experience of material life. So one main theme of chapter 1 is confronting with that, the fear of dying, the fear of losing people we love and things that we are attached to in this life. And that's essentially what causes Arjuna to come to this physical panic attack and to this existential crisis of realizing that not only this is going to happen, but it's going to happen very soon, because I'm looking at all these people right in front of me and I have to go kill them. Everybody's going to die. And that's just a terrible thing. Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, it really struck me the depth that Arjuna showed in going through this process of, I have family on both sides of this war field and everybody's going to die, and everybody who's dear to me I'm going to lose, and how being faced with that, so to speak, dark night of the soul, he reacted in such a compassionate manner where he first had, the physical panic attack, but then he went into, okay, my family members are going to die, and then into the other side's family members are going to die, who's part of his bigger family, and then also into a bigger dharmic crisis of, okay, now we're entering into sin by destroying family traditions and all the beliefs around that. And so, I look at my own life where when I'm really pushed to the limit, and in the last few years, I've hit kind of rock bottom, so to speak, where most of the material things of this world that I valued were kind of taken away and went away. And it's in those moments that, how do you react? And, I'm not the most evolved person in the world, so lots of times I react in a petty manner or a vindictive manner. And I just didn't see any of that from Arjuna in this existential crisis. Like, it was very inspiring to me.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Thank you, Sosa Prabhu, for the information you gave. Yeah, it's what I love so much about the Gita specifically is that it is it transcends time and places and cultures. It's something that is so relatable to everybody and everybody. And like you mentioned, the topic of having that, going through that existential crisis, that fear of losing, as if we ever had anything, right? As if we actually owned our families or our careers or anything that we place so much value in this lifetime. So it's quite interesting to look at it from a perspective of like spirituality, and it really puts things into perspective, and really helps us understand, although it's a hard pill to swallow for sure. It helps us not only look at where we're at and see where we stand in that progress, but also what the goal is. And so one thing that I particularly appreciated, besides what you have both brought up, was the fact that Arjuna's, not excuses, but reasons why he didn't want to fight were actually correct. Like, they're logical, they're like sound. Like, he's a very intelligent, compassionate, super spiritual person. And so for him to not want to engage in war because of what Kim had mentioned, he started out by saying, well, that's not going to bring me any happiness. Well, more than that, that's not going to what is that going to do to my family? And on a greater scale, objectively, that's going to just ruin the world, because war can only bring so much destruction, and so all these points that we hear Arjuna bringing up, he's on point. Like, I thought, this should be like the end of the Gita. Like, how is anybody gonna respond to that and have anything else to say? Like, yeah, I don't agree, I don't want to fight, I don't want to kill my family members. What else is there higher than family? And so I think that I really appreciate the fact that this is in the first chapter. So there's 18 chapters of the Gita. My mind is blown already. What else is going to come up? How is Krishna going to resolve these problems? And most importantly is, well, as a woman, as a soul in a woman body in the West, where I have grown up with a certain, I guess, structure to see the world, war doesn't particularly sound good to me or like the answer. Fighting against my family members is like something I would never think about. Familism is such a huge deal for some cultures, or for some people. Definitely in my life, that's been like, family's up there, then everything else is secondary. So it's putting a lot of important things on the table, and it's kind of uncomfortable to talk about these topics, especially when we're centering about the talk of death and how everything's gonna fade, and what's actually eternal, and what's the only thing that actually matters investing in. And so this is my first reaction to that first part of the first chapter.
Yeah, and another point is we are talking about Arjuna as a warrior in a battlefield, which part of our intention in this conversation about Bhagavad Gita is to make it very relatable to our audience. And most of us are not warriors, and we're not going to be in a battlefield having to kill people we love. So to make this concept very practical, let's imagine that we are a police officer. And as such, we are very duty bound. And we are now on call, and we receive this emergency call that there is this fight breaking up somewhere. And we have to attend. We have to go there and see what's happening. Once we get to that so-called fight, let's imagine that we realize there were actually gunfires shot and people actually got hurt, and ambulance is going to have to come, and somebody's on the floor bleeding, and you walk in and you realize that the person with a gun in hand who just shot somebody to death is actually your sister or your brother or your mother or your father. What do? Because you're a cop and it is your duty to enforce the law, and you must take this person to jail right now. But that's the person you love. What do you do in that situation? So this is more or less what Arjuna was feeling, but in his context of a warrior in the battlefield. To us, something that brings that experience closer would be an analogy like that, right? And the other point is the concept we introduced here of losing everything, the people we love, the things we're attached to. It really sounds like a depressing topic. It's like we're losing things, and spiritual life, especially as it is conceived of in the West, is supposed to be something zenful, something that makes you feel good. I'm spiritual and I'm all good and everything's beauty. And we're here talking about dying and the end of the things we like and the people we love. One simple analogy that comes to my mind is a phrase that says, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. So for us to truly embrace spiritual life, we have to recognize that we're not these mortal material bodies. We are an eternal spiritual soul. And in order to embrace that spiritual reality, there is no way but to let go of everything that is material. That includes our relationships to the other bodies around us that we call family members, and to the other things around us that we refer to as jobs and homes and cars and all of this stuff that we are attached to. It is inevitable that we must let go of these things in order to attain our spiritual life. So this is chapter 1. We're certainly not going to stop here at a point where we just have to die and lose everything we love and everybody we love and everything we're attached to. There are 17 more chapters where we're going to be introduced to the actual real solutions. And like Varangi pointed out, how is Krishna going to do it, right? Because Arjuna's arguments indeed are very sound for why war is wrong and we should not kill people we love. So it makes me extremely excited to even the possibility that through spiritual philosophy, Krishna is going to chime in and help us navigate this incredible dilemma. Kim?
I just would like to, before Kim moves on to maybe something new, I thought you touched on 2 really important points, and I have a question. When you say that spirituality necessitates giving up stuff that, it's gonna fade away, it's natural, at least for me, it's like, well, I don't want to let go of those things, because if we don't have anything else, right, we think that we're going to lose ourselves. So is this a prerequisite to start spiritual life, or is it something that happens gradually, or so is it one or the other? Is it something that we need to give up everything in order to start, or is it something that will happen, but then how do we start? Does that make sense?
It does. It's a great question, and it is definitely gradual. It is not a prerequisite. We can't be expected to come to the table already detached, because then we would already be spiritual beings living a spiritual reality. We must come with all of our material attachments to things and people, and then gradually, through the various methods that we have, many of which Krishna is going to explain in depth throughout the course of Bhagavad Gita, by embracing those spiritual practices, we are going to let go of our attachments to things and people. I can exemplify a big one of mine, being brought up in Brazil, culture which is heavily centered around getting together with the people you like and eating. We eat a lot of meat there, coming from cows, which I always thought was an act of like seeing my father, for example, coming in with that product and saying, here, this is what I'm going to give my family, and we're going to sit around and we're going to enjoy a dinner and we're going to eat this barbecue. To me, it was a kind act from his part. He worked hard all day to get that and provide it for us. It was a kind act from him. So that's one thing. It was culturally, it was something very in depth, deep in me. And then also I grew up playing basketball, so I was always hungry. And then eating meat was such a big part of satisfying that hunger. And when I first met the devotees, I was introduced to the concept of vegetarianism, which I now have been for the past 15 years. But at first, how do you let go? So I came to this spiritual path with a tremendous attachment to eating meat. And when I was told, hey, you're going to become vegetarian, I said, no, that's actually not going to happen to me. I will do everything else you guys want me to do, but I will not let go from eating meat. And what I was told was that this is the science of self-realization. So in order for it to be a science, there must be a theory, and there must be the way by which you verify that theory. And
like an experiment.
Exactly, an experiment. So by engaging in the spiritual practices that Bhagavad Gita will be teaching us, gradually the desire for eating meat vanished from my heart, from my mind, from my entire being. And there were many stages in my experience of that. First being, okay, I'm going to let go, but it's going to be painful. Then, okay, I'm letting it go, but it's not painful anymore. To then judging others who are still eating, to then being compassionate to others that are still eating, to then at this point in time, not even remembering what it tastes like from, or the texture in my mouth, and being in one sense repulsed by it, never ever conceiving of myself being able to do such a thing again. But again, from a non-judgmental perspective, it is gradual, because everybody who will come to spiritual life, they will bring with them all of their attachments, and gradually it will be vanished from their hearts as well. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah. And what I hear from your answer, and thank you for linking it to your own life, because that makes it a little more like, okay, personal, you know, you're putting some skin in the game. It's like, okay, you're being vulnerable. I appreciate that, because I can totally relate to those things. One of the things that I
6 months
heard.
to let go, by the way.
It's what?
It took me 6 months to let go completely. The first 6 months was a battle between wanting to let go of eating meats, but not really being able to. But then 6 months later, actually being able to. So go ahead, you were saying?
Thank you. Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. And I appreciate that honesty. But one of the things I heard the most about your explanation was how it wasn't that you, by stopping those activities, for example, eating meat, it wasn't that you no longer were connecting with your family. It just meant that now you were connecting in a different way. And I think that's something that is a little scary for most people, which is, well, if I let go of this and I identify so much with this, then if I let go of that, then what am I going to be left with? Who am I going to be? And so it's this concept of you're letting something go that's lower, right, for something that's higher, that's going to satisfy you on a deeper level. Not only that, but you're going to also benefit other people around you by taking up this higher practice. So that's something that definitely was there when I started, and I can only say that my life has been transformed for the better. Not only that, but I'm able to connect with people in much deeper ways than I thought before. The same thing I thought about drinking and partying, and not that those things are bad, but we think that we care about people when we do those activities with them, right? Only if I go to a barbecue can I feel like a part of the pack. And it's like, no, by being sober, you can actually connect with people in deeper ways. And that means that you care about them a lot more, because now you're wanting to connect with them sober. You can actually give a real part of yourself to your family, your friends. So I wanted to bring that up. Thank you so much for such a complete answer, and very real. It is not an overnight switch. It's a progress. And the great thing, like you mentioned, is that it's a science, right? We step into the lab and we try it out and we get results, and those results will motivate us to go a step further, and so on and so forth. Thank you. Sorry, Kim.
No, don't apologize. Yeah, I really appreciated, Tadeo, your point about getting to that point of compassion towards the people who still eat meat, because when it comes to spirituality or anything new, like ex-smokers or whatever the case may be, sometimes we tend to get into this uppity position of, oh, that person still eats meat and they're just so unevolved or whatever. But I really liked your point of compassion for those who are still in it, and being able to still relate to them in different ways. And yeah, Varangi, like, that's right on, because about, right on about when you're asking or encouraging people to give up something, there's got to be something higher, better, that they feel motivated to grasp onto. So yeah, those are really good points. Like, I can relate it to me in my life of yeah, when I started listening to lectures from Tukaram Prabhu and just the logic of everything, I'd never experienced so much logic and rational thinking when it came to spirituality. I thought it was always supposed to be some blind faith situation. So yeah, when it comes to things like meat eating or believing in an all good God, when you can get to those points with rationality, logic, then you can give something higher that people can latch on to and that they'll want to aspire towards. So.
Right. Go ahead, bro.
I thought we could also discuss another point that comes up throughout chapter 1, which we have already touched at this point in our study of Bhagavad Gita, which is that, again, going back to the idea that spiritual life will certainly be all attractive and everything that we can expect and even better. But we have to first get there. And in the beginning, it is not all so pleasant. We have to be confronted with the dark aspects of our existence now here in the material world in order to identify what they are and get better at it and evolve. So one other aspect that comes up in Gita already is how a true teacher, somebody who is going to actually teach you spiritual philosophy that allows you to evolve and become more of a spiritual being, will make things difficult for you, because that's how life is. Life is difficult. Even if it is great all through 75 or 80 years old, then you still have to confront death. And how do you do that? So the more prepared we are, the easier the let go process can be. And a good teacher will force us to understand difficulties of life. Krishna himself in Gita will explain how life can be very tough. So Krishna has already done that in this chapter that we have already studied, when he presents to Arjuna like, hey, yeah, look at all the Kurus here. And like Varangi mentioned earlier, that the Kuru dynasty is this huge dynasty which involved both the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And Arjuna's dilemma was that, hey, these are my cousins, uncles, brother-in-laws, and so on. And Krishna didn't try to sugarcoat it. Krishna tells Arjuna, yes, look at all the Kurus here. Indeed, these are all your family members. So there is that sobriety of spiritual life as well, to understand we are immortal bodies. Everything we love, every people we love will go. And the sooner we understand that point, the better. I've heard one of our other teachers give such an appropriate analogy. If you are renting an apartment and you know you have a lease that is doing 12 months, oh, now let's say by the 10th month or the 11th month, you already have a plan in place. You already think, where am I going to go next? How am I going to get there? And I need to start packing up. I need to start looking for another roommate. I need to start figuring it out. How am I going to move all my stuff from this place to that place? So there are many things you're going to do. Nobody is going to just sit there the day before you're supposed to leave your apartment and then start figuring things out. That would be terrible. So it is natural. We should care about what happens to us after death. Where do we go? What is the best place that we can go once we leave these bodies? Because leaving these bodies is not a choice. It is a must. We can't let go graciously, or we can't let go painfully. So a good teacher will present those dilemmas to us and allow us to start seriously considering these points, so that we are able to realize our higher nature, which is immortal, which is full of knowledge, which is eternal and blissful. But in order to get there, we have to let go of this. And in order to let go of this, we need to know what this is. And sometimes those realizations are not as pleasant. So I just want to point that out. Krishna, as an excellent teacher, he is making the point to Arjuna, yeah, these are all your family members, yes, and they are going to die, and we all are. So let's be aware of that and find out who we truly are, eternal spiritual souls.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I appreciated in class Tukram Prabhu's point about that we actually learn better or more effectively, both cognitively and behaviorally, when we're under a certain amount of stress. And then there's a point where it's too much stress and then we break and it's not a good learning situation. But yeah, a good teacher like pushes us a little bit, makes it uncomfortable. And apparently science has shown that that's really where we learn the most effectively. So we are running short on time. I was just wondering if you guys want to give any final thoughts for this episode, and next week we'll determine, if we want to keep springboarding off of this or move on to chapter 2. We'll just let it happen organically. But for today, are there any other closing points you guys want to make?
I have one closing point I'd like to make. In the beginning, I introduced myself by saying that I was very attracted to theology and religion, philosophy, and so on. And having studied it even at universities level, I would like to point out that our teacher, Tukaram, has been by far the greatest philosopher I have ever encountered. Having studied philosophy in universities, I can attest to that. Being a sober, dedicated, honorable devotee, he is a tremendous teacher for us all. Again, Varangi and and we've been taking his classes for over a decade, and it is never boring. It always gets better. We always learn more. This will be perhaps our 11th or 12th time around Bhagavad Gita, and I am as excited of starting it all over again as I was the first time. So my closing thoughts here is that we're going to be springing off Tukaram's teachings from Bhagavad Gita. And this is a highly dedicated devotee for many decades and who is extremely qualified. And we are extremely blessed to be able to get his lessons and bring it here to everybody who's listening so that we can share these teachings to everybody. So my final thoughts is that Tukaram is an amazing teacher and you are in very good hands.
Wonderful. I totally agree with you. We're really fortunate. It's amazing how it's really rare to find a good teacher, and it's much more rare to find a good student. We've heard from our teachers, right? And so yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think this is an opportunity for all of us to become better students and to eventually become teachers. This is definitely the hope of our teachers, right? That we continue giving to others what they have given us and so on. I guess my closing thoughts, I had two thoughts. One of them was when we're talking about all these personalities that were introduced in the first chapter, they're not just regular personalities, they're amazing, exalted souls and people. It is a tradition of integrity, of honor, of respect, of etiquette. And it's something that has been lost, I think, in today's society. And so I wanted to just highlight that point, that although we said, okay, let's not get so hung up on the names, it's not to disregard who these personalities are, right? They're our teachers. We follow in their footsteps, or at least that's our hope, and we're aspiring to be like that. And it's a tradition that teaches spirituality, but also the most basic aspects of being a person, which is to walk our talk, to be respectful, to follow the example, the authority of others that are further along in this path, which is so, I think it's taboo in today's society, saying I have a teacher and I'm a student and I don't know it all. And it's not all about what feels good, which was my second point. And you both brought it up. It's not just, spirituality is not just focusing on the things that we'd like to do or what feels good or my truth. Is actually following the truth in a structured and very curated science through millenniums, and these are people that are actually walking their talk, our teachers and their teachers. And so it's not something that is just interpreted by what we feel like saying, or we're projecting our own thoughts, but it's really just wisdom that has been passed down from generation to generation of really strict and serious spiritual practitioners and seekers. And I'm feeling really grateful because I brought this up earlier in another conversation. It's not something that, at least I feel, I don't deserve, but through grace, which is such an important aspect of spirituality, we're getting this wisdom, and then we're able to just talk about it and present it in different ways to hopefully reach different types of people as well. And so I just wanted to end with those 2 points, and I'm really looking forward to our next episodes.
All right, thank you guys. Yeah, I echo the same thoughts about Tugram Prabhu as well. He talks a lot about being on the shoulders of giants. Through his mercy, he's providing these trips, spiritual trips to India, all these classes, and his knowledge that he's amassed for 30 years and passing it on to us. It's just, I feel very grateful for him and for the community that he's built through Krishna's grace and mercy as well. And so, yeah, I'm very excited about our podcast, our episodes, and learning more from you guys. I got so much from this call today. So, yeah.
Me too. Thank you both so much. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
This has exceeded my expectations.
Thank you. I'm
What a
very
treat.
excited too.
Yeah, so this will be a weekly thing. We haven't decided when we're going to post it yet, so I won't say. We'll commit to a date right now, but it'll be every week for sure. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Wonderful.
Hare Krishna. All glory to
Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you for joining us on Simple Living, High Thinking. Please subscribe as new episodes post every Monday. You can tune into this podcast live every Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time. Check out our website for more details at simplelivinghighThinking.net. And if you would like to nominate someone for a devotee spotlight interview, contact us via our website at simplelivinghighThinking.net.